Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Innovation Cafe. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Tracy Diamond. I am the Senior Marketing Manager with Mount Sinai Innovation Partners, and I'm very glad that today we are joined by Marla Dubinsky and Laurie Keefer of the Feinstein Inflammatory Bowel Disease Clinical Center at Mount Sinai. Doctors Dubinsky and Keefer are the co-founders of Trellis Health, which is a resilience-driven connected health solution for patients, caregivers, and providers of IBD and complex chronic conditions. Doctors Dubinsky and Keefer have been working together at Mount Sinai for 5 years, utilizing an integrated clinical and multidisciplinary approach to better the outcomes for IBD patients. And they're here with us today to discuss digital health innovation and the technology that makes up Trellis Health. So please enjoy the interview, tune in, and feel free to leave a comment if you have a question or anything you'd like to share right here on this post, or you can feel free to send a direct message to the MSIP LinkedIn page, and we can keep the conversation going following the interview. So welcome, Marla and Laurie. Thank you again for joining us. We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah.
Before we dive into Trellis, can you explain what resilience is and what resilience-driven care means?
Sure. Yeah. And so, I mean, we're situated in the perfect place at Mount Sinai here to be talking about resilience. When we talk about it, at least in the context of Trellis, we're really talking about that bouncing back, thriving despite the adversity of having a chronic condition, in this case, inflammatory bowel disease. So, in my 20 years as a health psychologist working with IBD patients, I kind of got tired actually of asking the question, usually too late, about why so many patients with inflammatory bowel disease developed depression or anxiety. And one of the great opportunities of coming to Sinai to work with Marla is that we were able to sort of flip things on their head, ask a different question, right? Who are the warriors? Who are the patients that do well despite having inflammatory bowel disease? And what do they have that we can give, bottle up and give to others? How can we promote their well-being and not just look at our outcomes as a matter of presence or absence of disability or emotional distress? So that's sort of what led us to, and Marla will talk as well, but that's sort of the goal here with Trellis. If you think of what a trellis is, right, it's a platform, it's a connected structure that really kind of elevates people and helps them thrive, supports plants to grow and thrive. And that's basically what we're doing. We're building a platform that helps people grow and become their best selves despite having a chronic condition. We sort of flipped the spelling of Trellis a little bit to include the US, the us part, because we really believe in this sort of model of connecting all partners in care, patients, their caregivers, their doctors, the people who support them. And so that has really been that's what we mean by resilience driven.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining that to us. So let's dive into Trellis. What is Trellis Health exactly, and what's a connected health solution? Is that like an app?
Yeah, so if we take a step back and say, where are we in the healthcare delivery space? And we all know that when everyone is talking about on the same page, talking about patient management and creating this sort of community of care, meaning coordinating care, but all through a common platform, we know that patients feel more connected to their healthcare team, but also feel more connected as it relates to their family, their caregivers, their loved ones, their partners in care. We realize that right now there's so many silos of care. There's your primary care, then maybe your specialty care, then maybe your mental health care, then maybe other areas of care. And what was happening is that everyone was talking at a different pace, different language, and no one was looking at the patient in the center and connecting all these partners in care. So connected care really leads to improved quality of care delivery, essentially. It's not just connected care as it's just I'm going to connect you with people who can provide care. It's connected health, which looks to integrate all elements of health, be physical and emotional well-being, right? The point is that we all need to be integrated. And by creating a platform or a connectivity network a la Trellis, we felt that that's at the foundation. We know that patients, there's a appetite by consumers, right, to engage and connect and empower themselves to be in charge of their health. It is possible. They may not have all the tools, which is where really Trellis comes into play, where we want to give them the tools to feel their toolkit so that they're able to actually build something. Again, the concept of Trellis, right? Building something to blossom and flourish. There's also an appetite for physicians out there to be up to date with the latest and greatest gold standard approaches to these complex chronic diseases. There's so many new therapies. There's so many different care paradigms that are changing, I feel, in IBD almost daily. It's that quick moving pace that if you weren't connected to what is going on in the research or in these care paradigms, how would you know how to bring them to the patient, right away? So we know that about providers and patients, but there's also a customer. And anyone who is paying for healthcare is looking for solutions that could help identify which patients are going to need more help, which patients are going to be more high cost, and be able to deploy tools or care coordination plans or playbooks that are personalized and that will help reduce the cost of care, right? So it's really all seek, deliver, and pay for care, connecting, meaning all stakeholders. That to me is really connected health. And then you build sort of a solution, which is where you actually integrate all these aspects, take away the silos, break down those silos, also break down any geographic barriers, because that's the beauty of being able to be connected through any form of digital solution, right? So that doesn't matter where you live, you'll have access to gold standard care. That's sort of the vision or the dream of both Laurie and I, and the vision and mission of Trellus. I think being able to partner with the provider who already has a relationship with their patients, a trusted relationship, they made the diagnosis, they supported the patient, and being able to sort of work together with the provider and be able to holistically manage illness, right? More at a global health view, sort of looking at it, patient-centered whole person, and really be able to create the village and partner with the patient and the provider where they are, using these tools and these methodologies that are grounded in research and science, and actually making that available to everybody sort of creates a precedence, in my opinion, as to how care needs to be delivered and how health needs to be delivered.
Great. You spoke about empowering patients, giving them the tools they need for their toolkit to overcome or better manage these chronic conditions, and connectivity, which is a huge part of Trellis. Can you talk a little bit more about the unmet need in the market that led to a specifically resilience-focused connected health solution?
So I'll first talk about the disease and the chronic condition and what are sort of where the gap is, and then Laurie could speak to why layering over resilience into that really creates the perfect relationship or partnership. So if I take IBD, for example, which, just as a reminder, inflammatory bowel disease is a term that encompasses both Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. Approximately 3 million individuals have been diagnosed with this disease per the CDC. And one thing that we know is if about the majority, I don't know if it's 80, 90% of IBD patients are diagnosed and managed initially by their gastroenterologist, who may not be working in an IBD center, for example, or may not have a multidisciplinary team such as nutrition, dietitian, social work, psychology, pharmacy, all the things that me and my colleagues here at Sinai have been so blessed with all these resources that Sinai itself believes in, and allowed us to really grow and build a program that we deliver pen to paper analog every day in the IBD center. We wanted to be able to say that maybe for those patients who can't make it to New York or can't make it to an IBD center in their area, geographically limiting, far distance limiting, insurance limiting. There's many reasons why people can't access necessarily gold standard care, or may not know that there are centers of more expertise where clinical trials are being done, surgical expertise, radiology expertise. The more patients you see, it's a volume business, right? The more you see, the more information you have, and the more you could teach and learn and educate and almost use more of your own sort of predictive analytics as to what is going to happen next based on you've seen this before. So this is really an exposure issue. So imagine if we could provide this level of care to my colleagues in the community who don't have access to these multidisciplinary teams. That would be, a wonderful thing to say, all right, I know that you didn't maybe do 3 years of fellowship specifically focused on IBD, or you don't have an IBD program per se, and you don't have access to resources that are often not paid for. We're going to come in and we're going to teleport into you, and we're going to help you manage this patient together and create that virtual multidisciplinary team. That's at the platform level, but we also have people that are working for Trellis who are, for example, grit coaches. So as Laurie will get into sort of the resilience-based care, is that we also have this touch approach because we want to enhance the traditional care model where hospital, brick and mortar, where you actually go and receive care and procedures. There's no doubt that is not going to change. Our goal is to be able to enhance that experience for both the provider and the patient. And me, and Trellis and my experience in the IBD space, bringing that to the clinician and saying, this is where we think state of the art is today. As it changes tomorrow or next week, we're going to bring that right back to you. So you are always practicing IBD care as of what the latest and greatest is as of yesterday, right? That is a beautiful thing to be able, in my opinion, as an educator, to be able to provide. And be able to let them know using some of our tools which patients are at higher risk of developing complications from IBD itself, from the disease, which often leads to higher cost, could be tied to more disability, lower resilience, which I'll let Laurie allude to why layering on resilience to the underlying biology of the disease itself, and that interplay between emotional well-being, inflammation, and disease control. You can't do them in silos, which is how it's happening right now. So maybe, Laurie, you can talk about how your experience has been where you integrate a layer of resilience into an underlying biological sort of process.
Yeah, that's great. So, right. So as Marla said, we really can't dichotomize these two issues, mental and physical well-being. And we really are fully taking what is meant by the biopsychosocial approach, right? So we're including the biology in the psychology, and we're making sure that patients are equipped to deal with their disease across that. The mind and the gut in particular are very interconnected. So certainly for IBD, but as for other diseases as well, down the road, resilience, that bio and that psychology are going to be really important. One of the things that we offer when we focus on resilience-based care is the concept that you don't have to settle for a life that is somewhat less than because you have a chronic condition, right? And so many of our patients aren't walking around saying, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I have PTSD. They're just saying, I don't really have hope for that job promotion. I don't really have, clear goals in my life anymore. I've lost my way because this condition has really interfered with my ability to thrive and be who I am. And so over the years, we've come up with some very specific targets that equal resilience that we treat to in our program. Things like, does the patient have optimism and hope that they're going to get better? Optimism is learned, it's modifiable. Does the patient have social support that buffers them against things that go wrong? Can the patient regulate their own distress when they are going through hard times? What kind of skills do patients need? Are they confident? Do they know how to swallow that pill? Do they know how to talk to their employer about their condition? What kind of skills can we teach them? These are all very actionable, modifiable characteristics that we believe patients have those targets and we treat them to target, and they are resilient, then whatever comes their way throughout their lifespan, they will be able to rise to the occasion and handle it. And our program at Sinai was called GRIT, Gaining Resilience Through Transitions, because the idea is that when people are faced with the next transition in life, it's an opportunity for them to learn some new skills, figure out where they're going next. We want the sky to be the limit with our patients. And by having this resilience model, this transition model, where we're always monitoring what's new in the patient's life, what skills do they need more hope, we're able to really parallel what's going on with their excellent clinical care and in conjunction with their clinical care. And when we do that, we are able to see significant improvements in quality of life and well-being, but also, and this is sort of, why Trellus has taken off, I think, we've been able to show that we can actually reduce the healthcare costs of the disease when patients are resilient.
I mean, you both shared a ton of very valuable and informative, elements of what makes Trellus up. How do you feel that these aspects differentiates Trellus from other digital health solutions out there, or really anything else that's out on the market for chronic conditions?
Yeah, I think, we've seen through, obviously COVID-19 has changed a lot of the way we're looking at how to deliver good care, right? Through technology. And so I'll take the diabetes space, which has a lot of players in it. And probably one of the more well-known would be Livongo. We work at Sinai with Livongo and our Pop Health to deliver good care to diabetes patients, for example. And it includes device and monitoring your hemoglobin A1C, which is a target. So the idea being is that if you reach a certain target, then you will improve your work productivity, reduce absenteeism, reduce presenteeism, all the things that affect how you do your day-to-day operation at work, for example, asking an employer or partnering with employers to help keep your employees at work and being the most productive they can and the most resilient that they can in their career. So, but what's interesting is that a lot of these companies sort of partner with various solutions to try and have the entire package. They'll have an app-based sort of mental health program where if you're feeling stressed or anxious or having panic attack or some sort of PTS scenario, that you can go to this app and it'll help you, right? So just do some meditation, mindfulness, which again is part of our playbook at some level in different patients, but it's not a one size fits all. Oh, you're all anxious, go to this app, for example. It's not sort of personalized in terms of what kind of resilience driven playbook you need. Similarly, there is also the telehealth delivery, or the platform at which patients and providers can talk within, right? Creating the platform for you to actually do some telehealth. Well, instead of it being pieces, again, sort of means to me more siloed. Again, it's not one platform where all of this is feeding off of. We are not there'll be an app component because people want to track their symptoms, may want to be in touch 24/7, have access to our tools 24/7. There's no doubt there has to be an app component, but that's just sort of an addition to what we're really building is this platform for which we are all communicating, right? One common space, as I noted before. So what we're trying to do is ensure that we have the platform set up where we could use telehealth within the sort of, shall I say, the dashboard and the EMR, right? It's all in there so that everyone is looking at the same thing and interpreting the same way, right? That is really important. And what I think is unique about us is that we're able to have everybody in the care team all seeing the same thing. You may see it differently, you may not understand it. We may communicate to the patient about a certain lab or a certain resilience marker different than we would to the physician who may want more of an analytical or scientific way of saying this marker is up. So we're able to adjust even the way we dialogue and our narrative with the different players. Patients could add who they want to their care team. So if they're one part of the GRIT intake is actually asking them who is their sort of key care champion, who's going to help us ensure that you're sticking with your goal-oriented plan, for example. And so I think what is really clear is that everything we do is based on how connected we all are, right? So that connectivity is key. Now, we have three basic components to enable us to do and deploy Trellis wherever. That's the point again, is that our platform, which is called Trellis Elevate. The reason, again, Laurie mentioned the word elevate, we're very much about elevating everybody, all stakeholders, right? We're elevating education, we're elevating the way we deliver care, we're elevating the way patients understand why certain therapies or certain playbooks are appropriate for them. This isn't go to the internet and see what the latest, greatest strategy for IBD or for resilience is. No, this is actually customized and personalized to them specifically, which we see a lot of in clinic. People will bring stories about, I knew a patient who used this therapy, and I will have to say that that's different than your disease, right? Because IBD has multitude of different types. It's not just one. We typically approach as a homogeneous disease, but there's over 250 genes tied to these diseases. So this isn't a simple one, a point solution. This is similarly very personalized and requires a lot of knowledge, which again speaks to why we're going to elevate providers to be able to give them the same tools we use at the IBD Center or have built in our previous academic endeavors, wherever we have built these tools, and be able to offer them and stream them directly to the provider and the patients. Now, getting to the personalization, what I think is unique about really is, as we think about how do you stratify patients, we can either say you're going to stratify them based on resilience, yes, no, and you just do your playbook, or you're going to just stratify them based on whether their Crohn's or colitis is a high risk of surgery. That's what's currently happening, but nowhere has there been this integration of the two. So you're basically cutting a dichotomous outcome into 4 quadrants, and we call those our connectivity quadrants. And it's those quadrants which drive how connected the patient is to Trellis and how connected they are to traditional care modules, how delivered, like brick and mortar, as I noted, and how connected Trellis is with their care team. So there's multiple layers of connectivity that is all driven by our proprietary GRIT method, which Trellis has license to for not just IBD, but other chronic conditions. So one of the things we always, Laurie and I like to say, is we're building warriors one patient at a time, but that goes across the spectrum of chronic conditions, because IBD patients are not the only patients who are suffering from understanding, how do I thrive, not just survive with my chronic illness that I'm going to have for my entire life? How am I going to approach the transition of motherhood, being a partner in life, college, finding a new job? There's always stuff, right? Life takes a journey. And the ability to go right through and propel forward, rather than every time you hit what you feel to be a barrier, you sort of get stuck, as opposed to hop over it. And that's that image that we want people to also understand. And of course, in order for Laurie and I to get better in what we think drives, and our advisors and all of our colleagues think drives risk prediction, either resilience or IBD prediction, will come through our predictive analytics, because we'll have a huge treasure trove of data that is staying internally with Trellis, where we're going to have patients help us understand how we can even be better. So we can then teach patients better, teach providers better, teach all stakeholders, care champions, payers, so that we're all understanding this rapidly evolving field of chronic disease management, care coordination, and how resilience could really change the trajectory of a patient. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marla. I'd like to bring it back a bit to the mental and behavioral health aspect. Given this year, a global pandemic, you spoke a bit about adjustment for patients, for everybody in the entire world this year. This year has been absolutely unprecedented. So in terms of COVID-19, how have your thoughts on resilience in general changed because of COVID? And how has that sort of adjusted your approach in applying resilience to chronic and more mainstream conditions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think if anything, COVID-19 has served almost as a resilient assessment for all of us, right? It is that trigger that we have to figure out, all of us as a group, how we're going to move forward with it, whether that is your own anxiety about the risk, whether it's the social isolation that it's created, whether it's the economic hardship. Pretty much everybody has been affected in some way that has forced them to build their resilience. And so I think more than ever, we can talk about these concepts in a very open way, because we're all experiencing something similar. It's funny, like a lot of our IBD patients are like, I got this whole like social isolation thing. I'm used to staying home in my bed, and I know what it's like to be sick. And so for them, they're like teaching some of their friends and colleagues how to sort of set up their homes, and they're taking their resilience and sharing it with others. And I think the same thing is true. We've all adapted. Look at the resilience that Mount Sinai showed itself as a hospital. On how we took care of our employees and our and the staff and our patients, and how we transformed the IBD center into a telehealth center within days of going to, from, once the pandemic hit and we started to go to quarantine, there was almost no disruption in IBD care from the outpatient, health perspective. And so I think it shows that people are resilient, and we talk about this all the time in Trellis. Resilience is not a fixed quality. You're not either resilient or you're not. Resilience is a learnable, buildable skill, and we're seeing it happen every day during the COVID pandemic. So I think it brings a lot of hope and optimism.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all questioned. I think of myself as a pretty resilient human being, but sometimes you need to be checked, and need to understand sort of how do I sort of regroup and realize that all of us could be set back at any point in time, but it's the toolkit we have that gets us right back up. And I think that, again, is what is unique about taking emotional health and well-being in this positive psychology approach, as opposed to waiting and focusing on mental illness or mental condition, right? We want to prevent that. There are people, it would be harder to manage, probably, Laura, you can correct me if I'm wrong, anxiety and depression, if you didn't have that resilience, right? So they can go together. It doesn't mean that you won't suffer from having anxiety or depression, but it's how those get integrated into your day-to-day life, and how resilient you are when you feel depressed or when you are feeling anxious, like a la COVID.
Right. Yeah. And it's that growth mindset that we're really trying to create, both at Trellis and during the pandemic, of how do we grow from this? How do we move on? As opposed to that fixed mindset of this is just how it's going to be, and there's nothing I can do. I'm helpless. I'm hopeless. It's what can I learn? What can I do differently? Who can I connect with? How much more can I show gratitude to the things I do have in life? Those are the things that we are seeing people rise to the occasion during COVID, which I think is, speaks to how resilient people can be if they put the effort in and learn the skills.
And it's funny, I feel like you talked about optimism. It was always that had our patients feel like there was an end, right? We were optimistic. It wasn't stupid optimism. We weren't sort of just riffing about what's going to happen. But the idea that we actually were optimistic, and I could tell the way patients are responding when I'd say, how are you? It's nice to see you. I know it was difficult to come into the city. I'm really proud of you. You were brave to sort of get through that, what was holding you back. And the concept that if I talk to them about what's going on or how we manage it at Sinai, or give them information, they feel really optimistic about their disease. And we were sort of lucky in that IBD, the community at large as a global community, got together to get information really quickly to our patients. And Sinai was lead with University of North Carolina. So we did take a huge lead globally, by the way, and created a COVID registry called Secure IBD, and basically worked with at a global level to sort of give information. I've never seen something so quickly be built and deployed to give IBD patients information real time about how their therapies and be available using your telehealth platform, Laura, and be able to be available in real time. That's the beauty about the digital space, is there is this, I need your help now, not go find a referral and let me know when you see them and let me know what the wait list is. No, we're going to be available. And we take that fundamental philosophy to Trellis.
Yeah.
Great. And it's just inspiring and encouraging to hear that anybody can build resilience. It is a buildable skill. It is something, no matter who you are, you can create it. You can manifest it for yourself with hard work. I find that aspect simply inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to get into a little bit about the commercialization process and developing something at Mount Sinai. How do you feel Mount Sinai Innovation Partners worked with you to advance these efforts and ultimately develop Trellus?
Yeah, I mean, both Laurie and I feel the same way, is that there was no way we'd be here having this discussion with you if it wasn't for MSIP. And sometimes, part of leadership is seeing something you don't even see and taking you there. And that's sort of where I feel that happened with Eric Liam and his team, Bill Chang in particular, who really helped sort of shepherd this forward. It's been a work in progress. Nothing just, you have an idea and then all of a sudden it's cooked and baked and out you go. So they were clear on sort of what Laurie and I needed to do and what processes. And it all started really with us being part of being incubated at Sinai and talking to, sharing our story, working with sort of young entrepreneurs or new startup organizations, creating slide decks, interviewing people, get out of the building, the I-Corp program, and teaching us to get out of the building and even see whether your idea is interesting. It may be interesting to you because that's, of course, that's why we're passionate about it. But do other people get it? Is your story too complicated? Is it easy? Is it to a point where you've cooked it enough that it's now ready to be delivered to other people? And that's really what's happened over the last couple of years. Last year, we also presented our startup and had people in the audience who were interested, and it gave us an opportunity to see what the focus is in particularly digital health and entrepreneurs. And then through already the MSIP helped fund some of the GRIT prototype, which is trying to seeing how that interaction digitally, not just analog pen to paper like we do every day at Mount Sinai. They helped us, with legal support for protecting our IP, of course, and NDAs and CDA constantly with everyone we were talking to, bouncing ideas off. And they really help facilitate even naming of our company, branding, initial marketing strategy. They also, most importantly, probably, has helped us secure our seed fund. I mean, they got us in front of a team who had already worked with Sinai on another startup called Renalytics, which has been very successful. And we wanted to sort of work with these kind of investors who understand unique offerings that are not Me Too's, that aren't just another mental health app, for example. This is really a completely different paradigm of care. And they saw, I remember I had, I think, 15 minutes, and 90 minutes later, I'm still talking about the solution. So I figured that was a good sign. And then within a month, we were in London. So it was a very quick sort of like, once your story was clear and really without MSIP, wasn't going to happen. So we're eternally grateful. And that worked for us. Look, everybody has different ways of taking their ideas forward. And for us, there was no way we were going to do this without Mount Sinai. I think that's also a very distinguished distinguishing feature is Mount Sinai. Crohn's was discovered at Mount Sinai. How exactly are we going to move all that, do it over here without, taking advantage of all the amazing resources that the dean, our chairs, MSIP, all of our collaborators, our colleagues, Laurie and I couldn't be having this discussion without the entire IBD Center. So again, this is, the village we built on, at the IBD Center, and then being able to take it out. We couldn't have done it without Sinai. We couldn't have done it without leadership. Everybody from CEO, CFO, dean, chairs, down MSIP. And it's because of them we're actually having this dialogue. So Laurie and myself do not ever forget that concept of how we were able to get to where we are today.
Amazing. That's great to hear. My final question for you is, what's next? What's next for Trellis Health? What are you hoping to achieve in the next several years, let's say?
Well, it's pretty quick. We just, we're relatively young. We've been at this for a while, but obviously with COVID, things got delayed. We were about to secure our seed funding pre-COVID. Obviously, lots of startups sort of put on hold, but we were very blessed to have it come back into the forefront because it became clear that Trellus is needed more than ever. And our investors saw that very clearly and reached out to us 2 months after the pandemic and said, we need to get this out there. This is a need that needs to be filled. And so we were able to finally secure it officially about a month ago, legally, for example. And so we're just starting to ramp up, obviously, our team, hiring the key executives. We already have hired our CTO, our business operations, our CEO, Monique Fayad, of course, who's been with us now for a year, working with us to get this to where we are. And then our provider engagement and patient engagement officers, business operation. And now we got to build a clinical team. And in this time, we've also secured key scientific advisors because just like we said about the IBD Center at Sinai, both of us couldn't have been here without the help of our colleagues and support. And having them be part of a movement like Trellus is really important to us. So again, we're not people who think we could do this on their own. We got this. No worries. Don't need any help. Don't need mentorship. We got this. We actually understand that the value is in actually bringing people into our passion, who share the same passion as us, and incubate even better ideas and taking the best global advisors around the world. This isn't just a US or a regional issue. This is a global issue, and IBD is a global disease. It is increasing in Asia, for example, to a point where it's believed that there'll be as many people in Asia with IBD as there is currently in North America. So this is a evolving disease that is just going to get more complicated. So we feel our time is right, and we're busy creating educational programs. Laurie, maybe you can speak to some of the cool stuff we're building in the resilience side as well. Just basically explain what our goals are as part of our seed.
Yeah, I mean, we're really kind of setting up that platform around our resilience targets and, making sure that messaging to patients that our goal is to make you thrive. We're going to do that by building your optimism and building your self-regulation and building your social support. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to, assess using our grit score, where do you struggle? What are your strengths, but where are your limitations? How do we fill that gap? What do we need to do for you? We come up with a personalized care plan that is done in conjunction with your grit coach. You get tasks. We know that, we know what you're working on and why you're going to succeed, and, really making sure that the patients are engaged and understand the broader goal of and the broader outcome. So not just the lack of an emotional problem, but the thriving, the well-being that we really want them to walk away with on the platform.
Yeah, so the cool thing is that by January, we should be up and running and providing our connected health solution and partnering with, of course, customers to provide whether it's their members, shall I say, whether it's employee or health plan members, showing obviously at the end of the day, our goal is to really be part of the value-based solution of healthcare. No more sick care. It's about healthcare. We all agree. We're all on the same page. And in order to deliver value care, you have to increase the quality while decreasing the cost. And that's essentially what we will deliver to our customers and improve the quality of care for our patients.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so very much again for joining us today. This has been so valuable. It's amazing to hear about Trellus and all of the hard work that you've been doing over the years to bring such a necessary solution for patients out there for IBD and all of these complex chronic conditions. I can't wait to see what happens with Trellus in January and over time. So I look forward to maybe having you back on the live stream again with a great update. And I wish you both the very best of luck. And thank you all for tuning in today. Again, please feel free to continue leaving comments, ask questions, and we can keep the conversation going. This recording will live as a regular LinkedIn post on the MSIP LinkedIn page, so you can access it whenever you'd like. And we look forward to hearing from you all soon. So have a good afternoon, everybody.
Have a great day. Thank you.